Cynical, immoral, and hypocritical. That's how Governor Bobby Jindal describes the federal lawsuit to block the private school voucher program in Louisiana. Speaking at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. this week, Jindal and former Florida Governor Jeb Bush joined a chorus of GOP leaders in calling for the Department of Justice to drop the suit. The lawsuit contends that because several Louisiana school districts are still under desegregation orders, the state should have gotten court approval before moving forward with the vouchers. Because that did not happen, DOJ wants to halt the program for the next school year.
Now, this issue has gotten so much national attention that tonight we are continuing the conversation we started last week about the DOJ lawsuit.
Joining us this time around are Ken Campbell, president of the Black Alliance for Educational Options, also known as BAEO, and Mary Patricia Ray, the legislative and political director for the Louisiana Federation of Teachers. Once again, thank you so much for being on our show to talk in depth about such an important topic across the state.
Great to be here.
Yeah, very happy to be here.
Well, let's just start right off the bat with your positions on this lawsuit. Ken, you've called it disgraceful.
We do think it is disgraceful because at the end of the day, the scholarship program is about giving opportunity to low-income children who otherwise would not have an opportunity. And anytime you stop that for just strictly legal reasons without paying attention to what's happening with the children, I just think it's unacceptable. So, yeah, we do think it's disgraceful.
Mary, Patricia, what do you think?
When Governor Jindal signed Act 2, the voucher law, into law, a provision of that law stated that everything in it was contingent upon approval by the judges overseeing the DSEG orders that have been ongoing in some parishes in Louisiana for decades. It's just now that he's decided that apparently the law he signed doesn't apply to him. For that reason, and because of a pattern of behavior like that, our organization feels that the underlying reason that there are desegregation orders in these parishes is to make sure that every student gets a great educational option, and that if Governor Jindal was really interested in that, instead of going all around the country talking about how disgraceful the Obama administration is, he'd be here at home working on solutions to the problems we have.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Ahead.
I just one thing I would like to say is, our reading of the law is very different. We don't think anything in that law subjects this entire program to desegregation. There is one place in the law where they talk about it, and as we read it, it applies to public schools that decide they want to accept scholarship students, because our law allows children to attend private schools or higher performing public schools. And as we read the law, clearly he's saying that if there is a public school that wants to accept scholarship kids and it's under DSEG, you have to take that into consideration. We don't believe that applies at all to kids who want to leave and go to private schools.
Well, see, this is the heart of the matter, and this is what I want to understand, because last week when we spoke with Superintendent John White, and we also spoke with Debbie Moe of the Louisiana Association of Educators, this was a central issue that we got a lot of back and forth on, because Superintendent White harped on the fact that it's an immoral issue, is what he called it. Governor Jindal again used that word immoral when he spoke to the National Press Club today. But aside from the morality of it, let's deal with the legality of it. As you read the court order, is Ken right or is he wrong? Did the state have to get court approval before it implemented this program?
Well, like I said before, Shauna, these DSEG lawsuits, part of which are the desegregation orders that are approved by the judges in these cases, have been ongoing for decades. Certainly, whether we like it or not, there are some areas of law in which the federal government has supremacy over whatever we decide here in Louisiana. One of them is that those areas is that these judges have the power to approve a DSEG plan. When local districts or the department or Bobby Jindal or whoever make decisions that impact those plans, the judges have the ultimate say in whether they're compliant with the judge's plan or not. And as far as what we passed here in Act 2 in Louisiana, as someone who was present during all of those committee meetings and at the legislature every single day of the session in which we passed that law, I can tell you that there were questions asked about what that phrase meant in the bill, and the understanding that many legislators had when they pushed the green button on that bill or when they pushed the red button on that bill is that if it passed, it would be contingent upon approval in each parish's particular desegregation situation.
Kenneth, the argument I'm hearing is you're not protecting the kids. You're going back to desegregation laws 40 years ago.
Right.
There's 34 parishes in Louisiana still under desegregation laws, which we could talk an entire program just about that factor as well. Your thoughts?
I think the strategies that we employed 40, 50 years ago were probably the right strategies for that time. But it is 2013, and I think our top priority right now has to be to get every kid into a quality school, regardless of the racial makeup of that school. And it would be great if everybody wanted to go to schools that were racially diverse, that were economically diverse, which in some regard I think is probably more important. But that's not reality. Reality is there are people in this state, children in this state, that are stuck in low-performing schools, and they do not have the resources to get out. And so the real question is, as a society, do we believe it is urgent and imperative that we give those kids some solutions, or do we force them to stay in places that aren't working for them? And I don't know how we can be that sort of society.
Yeah, go ahead.
And what I'd say is that it's imperative to also ask if what we're providing is actually a solution. Here in Baton Rouge, we have one school that's made up almost entirely, 100% of voucher students. Bobby Jindal has stated that 90% of all vouchers go to African American students. So what he is implicitly saying is that he has sanctioned the segregation of mostly poor black children in a school with no certified teachers, and in many cases these schools that don't have playgrounds, lunchrooms, access to free and reduced lunch. So to feign surprise that the federal government or any concerned citizen might have a problem with that is a dishonest communication with the people of Louisiana, and certainly a breach of the public trust on behalf of the Department of Education, who did nothing to inquire whether this plan was going to comply with these deseg orders or not.
We have, Louisiana has the third highest percentage of children who attend private schools in the country, the third highest. We have one of the lowest per capita incomes, which tells me that everybody who has money in this state, middle class, black, white, no matter where you live, are finding ways to send their kids to private schools. And so when we have a policy that says low income children don't have that same opportunity, people who support equity, people who support fairness, I believe should be fighting for the rights of parents to say this is not working for my child and I need the power to make a different choice. Now, that's not to say that private schools are better than public schools. I don't think anybody would say that. You'd be, kind of insane to make that argument. But we do have to acknowledge that kids have different needs and interests, and there are some schools that meet those better. And they need to be able to go to those schools.
Let me ask you, how concerned do we need to be with the whole desegregation order? Because Bobby Jindal says that this lawsuit flies in the face of exactly what the desegregation orders were designed to do. But Steve Monahan, president of the LFT, has said that schools are now more segregated now than they were 40 years ago. So help us to wrap our minds around and get a better understanding of the whole deseg issue and how
Mr. Campbell said earlier that he thinks that the deseg idea is kind of outdated, and that it might have worked back in the 50s when some of these deseg orders were first instituted. The problem with that theory is that these deseg orders are reevaluated on an annual basis, and they're not just about quotas of children having to go to school together. That's not what the plans do. They talk about how schools have to spend their resources to develop better facilities for kids in districts that are minority or majority minority. So if the issue that Bobby Jindal or that any organization may have is with the propriety of still doing these deseg orders, then they should take that up with the federal government. And the best way to do that would be by submitting information about the voucher program in compliance with Act 2 so that these judges can make a decision. No one has said that these judges are going to decide the vouchers won't work in the district. It's simply that the department felt they were above the law and did not ask.
And as I read, when I read the lawsuit, they strictly talk about the percentage of kids changing in schools. They don't talk about facilities. They don't talk about how resources are spent. What they talk about in the lawsuit is the percentage of kids and the racial mix and how that changes based on this law, which to me is suggesting that that is their top priority. And in my mind, again, we have to be more focused on quality and getting kids into a quality school. And we can't force low-income parents to have all the burden of satisfying deseg, because people with money have left these school districts. The reason that our schools are more segregated is because people have moved to the suburb. They've set up, in many ways, their own public school systems that are majority one race. So you can't then say, well, all the people who are left have to be subject to some different order because they don't have money and they don't have the means to leave.
And keep in mind that these vouchers affect 2% of all students. And we talk about leaving people behind. 98% of students are still in public schools from whom we're robbing $45 million this year to fund vouchers.
Thank you both so much. We're going to have to let that be the last word. We appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.